So thank you all for joining us. This is our second meeting in the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation discussions that we're engaged in now. So thank you. To the people on YouTube, you can always reach us through Buddha Practice Study at gmail.com. If you have any comments or questions, anything that we can help with. So please don't hesitate to write us a note. If you'd like to join us on our Zoom, you'd be welcome to do that, and we can send you the information for that as well. So in keeping with our normal format, we begin with our opening motivational prayers, which are prayers to ourselves to remember what it is, why we are engaging in these teachings, these discussions, these studies and practices and so on, why we're doing that. And fundamentally, we're doing it for the benefit of others. We're doing it for the benefit to bring enlightenment, to help bring enlightenment to all beings and so on. So through that, we help ourselves. But the goal is to overcome our own individual ego, because the ego wants to hold on to, our own personal identity and so on, and that keeps us from being open and free. So we're trying to stabilize that free mind heart, and not to let the intellectual brain heart interfere with our open heart mind. So we do the opening prayers first, then we engage in our discussion for tonight, which takes most of the time of our session. And then at the end, we do a short dedication to dedicate the merit of whatever it was that we were able to accomplish during this time. We dedicate to the merit for the benefit of the enlightenment of all beings. So I hope this helps. So tonight, we do have a booklet, and I've sent it out to people, and so I'm going to screen share it, and you get a flavor of the prayers. The first prayer is called the altruistic motivation. So one moment, I'm going to put this up. Okay, so I presume you all can see that. Okay. So recite out loud. If you can read this, if you've got your book and you can follow in your book, will be really good. So tonight I'm going to recite this. And so we do it first in English, and we do it twice in English, and then we do it once in Tibetan language. And the reason why we do it in the Tibetan is because of the vibration. The Buddha taught in a native language at the time that the Tibetan language and so on are all based on. So to be able to resonate, to be able to tune in to that vibration is why we continue to recite it in the old language. But the meaning is most important here in English. So we recite this twice and then once in the Tibetan. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. In Tibet. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Pa dang tam shaken pe bar du jo par je pa tam shaki so je pe. Manam kadam yam pesem chantam she dewa dang den. Dug now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe zhang zhu brin po she to pa zha. The next prayer is called the Action Bodhicitta prayer. Bodhicitta is two Sanskrit words. Bodhi means enlightenment, and citta means the heart mind. So it's the wholly enlightened mind, and putting that into action for the benefit of others. So we recite this in English twice. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In Tibet. Deshe tu sangma ge bardu lunagi samge walako. Mashe bardu lunagi samge walako. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta samgi bardu lunagi samge walako. The next prayer we recite is called the short refuge prayer. So what we are taking refuge in, which is like our safe home base, if you will, when things get confused, when anxiety arises within us, when doubt arises in us, we take refuge in the three jewels. And the three jewels are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha represents the mind of the Buddha, and the Dharma represents the speech of the Buddha, and the Sangha represents the community of those who are on the path to become Buddha, to awaken and realize that they have Buddha nature within themselves. So we take refuge in these three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, body, speech, and mind. So we recite this twice in English. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In Tibet. Sangye chodang soki chonam la Zhangzhu badu dagni kapsuchi Dagi jinsoki pe sonamgi Drola penshir sangye jupasho. And the next prayer is called the four immeasurables. These are the four vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind. So the four immeasurable qualities are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And we will refer to this many, many, many times. So very important. This is all the enlightened ones, all the Buddhas, whether in our Buddhist tradition or whether in the Christian tradition or the Jewish tradition or the Hindu tradition, the Islamic tradition, whatever, the loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity is the essence of the heart mind of what it is to be a noble, virtuous human being, a complete human being. So we remind ourselves of the four vast immeasurables. Twice in English. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. In Tibet, Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she dewa dang dewe gudang dem par jorchi. Dug now dang de now gi gu dang dra war jorchi. Dug now me pe de wa dang mi dra war jorchi. Nei ring chak dang ni dang dra wei tang nam la ne pa jorchi. So for tonight, these are the opening prayers. Does anybody have any comments or questions about anything regarding these prayers? Okay. Then I just want to say that what we are doing is we are, excuse me one second. So we're following a book, a textbook called the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation. And this book is the main book of, it's called Lam Rim book, and it's the stages of the path for an ordinary human being to be able to become on the path to become an enlightened one, to become a Buddha, to recognize the Buddha nature that we all have within ourselves. So this is the stages of the path of what we go through in order to be able to recognize that our true nature is what we call Buddha. It might also be called God. It might also be called Jesus. It might also be called Christ. It might also be called Krishna or Brahma or Allah or whatever tradition that you are familiar with. When they talk about the essence of what it is for that particular tradition, that's what we're talking about here. So all these paths are leading us to the same realization that we have this true nature within ourselves. And it's a virtuous true nature, and we do for others, and so on like that. So this helps to support that. So there is an academic that we go through, learning the vocabulary, learning these practices, and so on. So the academics are the first part. And then concurrent with that, we do practices where we're reciting certain prayers or practices, certain mantras and things like that, which are helping to stabilize the awareness of our being on the path and how it is that we're transcending our ordinary mind into the mind of being awakened. So so the stages of the path, this jewel ornament liberation, we say liberation from the suffering that we are experiencing in this world, And we talk a lot about that. So for right now, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. We'll talk more about it as we move along. In our first meeting last week, we talked about the first chapter of this book, which was the pure nature, our excuse me. Sometimes I have to refer to my notes because I have momentary lapses of memory. Words seem to escape sometimes. The primary cause of why it is that we are human beings, why it is that we were born as human beings, was to realize our primary cause, to realize our Buddha nature, what we call Buddha nature. You could call it, like I said, God nature, Christ nature, whatever. So to recognize that, to realize that, we talked about that there's 5 families of that realization, of coming to a realization that we are an awakened being, that we have that Buddha nature within ourselves. So you can watch that if it's on our YouTube channel. You can go back and take a look at that. Tonight we're talking about Chapter 2, which is the working basis, what we have to work with to realize that we have this true nature. And that working nature, that working basis, is our precious human life. That we have this precious human life. We're part of the animal family, but we have an intelligence that allows us to be able to investigate and to be able to stabilize, our presence in this awakeness of interaction with other beings, with ourselves, and so on like that. In this vibration that is penetrating us all. We use this example of a vibration that penetrates us all. So it's like tuning in to a radio station, that vibration. We're tuning in to the teachings and to all the practices that have been done over the past 2,600 years in the case of the Buddhism and so on. So this precious human life, I'm going to screen share now another prayer, a short prayer. Okay, so I think you can. So what we are looking at here, this is, sorry. Oh, I see what's going on. I just need to move this. So this working basis, this precious human life. So it says, ho, this kind of leisure and endowment is so difficult to obtain. When one obtains a physical body, which is easily lost, do not waste it, but use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. There's one other thing I can share with you. So we have this book. This is a practice and prayer book that we can send to you. If you don't have it, we'll be more than happy to send it to you, that has all these prayers in here. So this is what I'm showing you right now. So we think about the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. The 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. The Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha, who lived 2,600 years ago. And through his gift of his genius, he was able to articulate his experience in being able to find his liberation, to find his enlightenment. And everyone has to find it for themselves. But he was able to show his path in order to do that. There's other paths. You can follow other paths, no doubt, and you can incorporate different paths together and see how they kind of layer on top of each other and so on. But these four thoughts are the thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha. The teachings are very articulate, they're very comprehensive, and at the same time, they're very concise. So we talk all about this, and so these four thoughts are what keeps us in the moment of being in the Dharma teachings. That it's not just when we get together for a couple of hours once a week, or however much we're able to practice and meditate and so on, but we take it to our work, we take it to our family, we take it to our friends. Wherever we go, we're taking these four thoughts along with us. So the first of these thoughts is precious human life, that we have a precious human life. So to repeat myself, here we say, the freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Oh, this kind of leisure and endowment are supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. So last week, when we were talking about these 5 families of human beings who have Buddha nature within themselves, although they may not recognize it. So the first was called the disconnected family. They have no sense of their spirituality. The second was the dubious family. They hear the teachings, they might hear references to them, they might meet people who are talking about it, but they're quite dubious, they're doubtful that there's any relevancy for them, and they choose not to follow or pay attention to these things. The third is what's called the hearer family. And in the hearer family, they do more than just hear the prayers, but they engage in the practices and the prayers. But they are hearers, and they're not really connected to the result. They're doing this more out of fear that if they don't do it, they're going to be missing something. So they recognize that, these are precious prayers, these are precious practices, and people are telling them that, but they haven't made the commitment truly to be able to engage and to be able to transcend their ordinariness in order to benefit other beings. And if they do, it's only for themselves. They're selfishly looking to be able to do this. That's the third family. The fourth family is called the solitary realizer. So the solitary realizer are beings who have been engaging in the practices, engaging in the teachings, and have developed a rather stable presence in that. They're able to maintain a high level of freedom of realization of their own mind, but they selfishly hold on to it for their own benefit, for their own aggrandizement. They're not willing to share it. They're not willing to share it with others. And so they selfishly are holding on to this, and they develop an arrogance. They develop a conceit about them, and keeps them at a lower level. They really haven't become a true Buddha because they selfishly are holding on and thinking that they have become superior to other beings. So this holds them back. So that was the fourth family. And then the fifth family is the family that are following the teachings of the Buddha, teaching the followings of the spirituality, following the academics and the practices, because they find that there is a middle way. The Buddha taught a middle way, that there's extremes, and that we have choices through our dualistic nature and so on. And we find that that these things are there. It's part of the human consciousness, and it's through the middle way of appreciating these different dualities and so on that we make our way, we cut our way through the morass of all these confusing states and so on. So this is called the Mahayana family. This is the great vehicle family, the Mahayana family. And so they are well on their way on the path to become a Buddha, to recognize their Buddha nature. So this precious human life are those beings who are on this path. So whether they are a hearer family or they are a solitary realizer family, because they are in the midst of the academics, they're in the midst of the practices, although they haven't brought them to a fruition of realization of their source of their confusion and so on. But they are on a path. They are following a precious human life. And then in the Mahayana tradition, in the Mahayana level, they are indeed on the path and are focused upon a precious human life. They realize that they have a precious human life. So there's there's 8 freedoms and 10 advantages of being on this path, of recognizing this precious human life. So we think about this quite a bit as being practitioners, being people who are studying this, to be able to articulate this to ourselves and to others. So we look at what these practices are, what these 8 leisures are. So these 8 leisures are to be free from the 8 unfavorable conditions. So we're born into this world, this of confusion, of dualistic nature and so on, and there's many things that are going on, these unfavorable conditions, but we have many favorable conditions. So because we're dualistic, we need to be able to understand what the unfavorable conditions are so that we may be able to learn how to overcome that unfavorability and be able to transform that into favorable conditions. So we go through this, and this is something that we reflect on many times. So here the first one is that that we're free from being reborn in the hell realms. In the hell realms are constant suffering. So there's no opportunity to practice the Dharma. We're an improper vessel because we're consumed by being in these hell realms, these fierce realms that are the results of our bad behavior, killing other beings, lying, stealing, doing sexual misdeeds, I said stealing, lying, and being able to harm other holy beings, to be able to harm someone who is on the path, to interfere with their progression along the path. So these hell beings are like, they are consumed by their demons. We say that these hell beings have these internal demons. So it's a psychological thing. You know, there's not a hell realm that we say, yes, you can go to these coordinates, you know, either on this planet or out in space someplace and in the universe, and you follow these coordinates and you're going to come to these hell realms. These hell realms are symbolic of people who are consumed by this demonic control that is taking their ego and using their ego for their own identity. Because the ego will identify with anything. It'll identify with virtue, but it will also identify with non-virtue. And the ego will become proud and very happy in many, many cases that it is doing terrible things. It is doing lies. It is doing cheating. It is doing stealing and killing and so on like that. So we can say for our conversation tonight that we all are fortunate that we're not born into these hell realms that are consuming us. We are here tonight so that we can open our mind, our heart mind, and realize that there is a spirituality that we can tune into, and so on. So the second is rebirth as a hungry ghost realm, who are tortured by mental burning, no opportunity to practice Dharma. We're an improper vessel. So these hungry ghost realm people, these are people, psychologically we talk about, that these are people who are very, very greedy. They're very, very miserly, that they want more power. They want more possessions. They want more money, whatever it is. They want more, and they're never satisfied. And they are symbolized by having these great round bodies, these rotund bodies with very short legs and very short arms. And so they don't have the mobility to be able to move about. They just wallow around in their greed and in their miserliness. They also have very, very small mouths and very long, thin necks. So what that represents is they cannot consume enough, they cannot eat enough, they cannot drink enough to satisfy their insatiable hunger and thirst. So again, as it's for possessions, for power, whatever, these hungry ghost people are suffering very, very deeply. And because of that, their minds are completely absorbed with this greediness and this miserliness, and they're not a proper vessel to be able to recognize their true nature, their virtuous true nature, their heart mind, their spiritual mind, in the heart center of their body. The third of the 8 lasers is that we are not reborn in the animal realm, who are mostly overpowered by stupidity with no opportunity to practice the Dharma. So again, is an improper vessel who cannot be able to process what it is to be able to the difference between virtue and non-virtue, that they are ignorant, they are deluded animals and so on. They have love, they have compassion. We see that more and more, with many of these documentaries that we've seen, or maybe you've done work out in the field where you've studied animal behavior and so on, or your domestic pets, you've seen that and so on. So they do have great qualities about them. They are sentient beings. They have this true nature within them, but they don't have the intelligence to be able to process it. So we said that they are overpowered by their stupidity or by their inability, their lack of intelligence to be able to recognize themselves or others, or to be able to process the language and so on that's necessary to be able to cognize, what is going on within themselves, within their heart center. So we're not born as an animal being. We're not born as a hell being. We're not born as a hungry ghost being. So the fourth of these 8 leisures is that we're not born among barbarians, where there is difficulty in meeting spiritual beings who believe their negativity is positive behavior. These are known as jealous gods. So through history, there have been these barbarians who have marauded, through great territories and seized lands and murdered people in unthinkable ways, unspeakable ways, and so on, who have laid waste to civilizations and remodeled them and the way that they wanted to do them and so on. And we're not among that. You know, we're very fortunate. As I look out and see who's attending with us tonight, I can recognize that everybody has passed that, is not subject to these barbarian tactics and so on. Although even in this life now, at this time now, we have seen barbaric behavior in our lifetime. We have seen people who relish in the barbaric behavior that they take against other people and so on. So this barbarianism prevents them from being able to recognize that all beings have this true nature within themselves, and all these beings, their life is precious, and that it shouldn't be taken from them for any reason. So we're free from that. We're free from they call them the jealous gods. The gods because they have great power, whether it is physical power or it is intellectual manipulative kind of power that some people can wage over other people, where they can conjure other people to follow them and so on like that. And people will give them money, will give them respect, will give them power and so on like that. So they have great power, but they don't have any wisdom, true wisdom, virtuous wisdom, to be able to use that power. So we're not in that class. So the fifth is rebirth, that we are free from the rebirth of a long life God who abide in a non-conceptual state, no mental activity, no opportunity to practice the Dharma. So we talk about the God realm. We talk about God beings. Now, I know that, for many of you listening for the first time, you may not have thought of something like this, and it may even shock you to some degree because it may undermine what you think about gods and so on. So the notion within the Buddhism is that these gods are like man gods. This is all part of being a human being, and we give this power, this godly power, if you will, to other beings or to ourselves even, that we have this great wisdom, we have this great love, and we relish in the luxury, we relish in the pleasure that we have, that we create for ourselves as gods. And the fault of that is that we do not have compassion for other beings. So in so many traditions, people, civilizations, societies, they have their gods, they have these great beings, and they pray to them, and they pray to them to bring them wealth, to bring them a nice home, to bring them family, to bring them children, to take care of them, to bring them job security, all these different things. But it never seems that there is an actual real conversation going on, or that the gods are even paying attention to them, and you really can't track that there is a true predictable result from all these prayers and so on. So we say that these gods are they're in a non-conceptual state, but they have no mental activity. They don't have the ability to be able to bring method. They're not showing other beings how to be able to use the wisdom that they have. An example of this that I use are the people who are in great teaching profession, say professors in universities and so on, the ivory gates, the ivory towers, who have great wisdom, but they can teach the academics, but they're not teaching the actual methods of how to engage in being able to help themselves. They remain in their own pleasure. They remain in that, and they turn a deaf ear to those who are supplicating them. So we can say that that we're not born as these long life gods, that that we are ordinary beings who are on the path to be able to free ourselves, to see ourselves as complete human beings who will have the ability to be able to have loving kindness, to have wisdom, and to have compassion, to have the ability to be able to practice skillful means, to be able to know how to help other beings, what methods they need to be able to use that wisdom and practice that wisdom for themselves to be able to attain enlightenment. So number 6 is the rebirth among people that hold wrong views, that do not understand karma. So these wrong views that do not understand, these are people who are who don't believe that there is a law of reciprocity, that they don't believe that there is a natural law of what we call karma. Karma is a Sanskrit word that means action. And before there can be an action, there needs to be a thought. There needs to be a cause. There needs to be a reason to take an action or to not take an action. So an inaction can also be an action, to not engage when we can. The result of that action or non-action then would be the result of that karma, the fruition of that karma. So there is this invisible natural law of karma, cause and effect, we say. So some people just simply do not believe in that. However, there are people who many years ago believed that, didn't understand that there was gravity. There was this physical natural law of this invisible force called gravity. But now, of course, we know that, and it can be proven in the laboratory. It can be proven, just by our very nature and so on as human beings on this planet and so on. So there's also the electromagnetic force, which is invisible. However, if we go up and we put our finger in the electrical socket that's in the walls of your house, or we touch the bare wires of an electrical cord, we will get quite a shock and know, this power is invisible. This electromagnetic power is invisible, but yet it has great force to it, and we can use that energy to be able to illuminate our rooms and make the fans work and do all the different things that we take for granted through the power of electricity and so on. And then there's the force of what we call the weak force and the strong force. And these are more abstract. They are the forces that hold the atoms together, to keep them from flying apart, to keep the nucleus with the proton and the nucleus in the center and the center part, the neutrons and the protons and the nucleus, and the electrons that are spinning around the nucleus and so on, that is holding them together. But then there's a weak force that is pulling them apart. And through those two forces, through this nuclear energy and so on, great power is there to be able to do that. So the point is that all these forces are invisible. They are physical energies. They are physical things. So, but through our own actions, we can see that there is also an invisible karmic or an invisible force of virtue, that if we do good deeds come to us. If we do bad deeds come to us. If we have bad deeds, if we have the potential of bad causes that could cause bad karma, that we can apply good karma that will neutralize that negativity and will have a good result. Likewise, we could have a good cause, but ruin that through a negative behavior, and then we have a bad result. So karma, cause and result, is a natural law that, and there are many people who hold the wrong view that they do not believe in the karma. So karma is a very important feature of the Dharma teachings. Number 7 is rebirth in a land that is absent from a Buddha. So in the Buddha, we talk about that the Buddha is an awakened one, is the awakened one. He's awakened to the realities of nature, and also to that nature to include that which is invisible to us, that which is something that may be of other dimensions, that something that is like a vibration that runs through our whole existence, that penetrates all beings and so on. And from that comes our dualistic nature. So the Buddha is the awakened one who recognizes that, and we all have the potential to recognize that Buddha nature. We have that Buddha nature within ourselves, and we have the potential to be able to recognize that and become Buddha. We can do that in this lifetime, or that perhaps there's, in some strange way, that there continues to be reincarnation, that there continues to be a reconstitution of our energy, that we have a birth after birth after birth after birth. So we say that we are free from the idea that we are absent from a Buddha, because the Buddha teaches. That's one of the qualities of being a Buddha. That the Buddha is not just a passive being. A Buddha is active within us all. And so, as I said before, that Buddha, God, Jesus, Christ, whatever, is in our heart center, not our fleshy heart, but the energy center in our heart, and so on, in our heart center, is that this is where that energy is. This is where that Buddha is. This is where that true nature is. So we are born in a place where, if we choose, we can follow those teachings. We can follow whatever being that is who is leading us in that direction. The 8th of these leisures, or of the unfavorable conditions, the 8th one is rebirth as a stupid person who cannot understand the differences between virtue and non-virtue. So here we have to define a stupid person, and unfortunately there's many people who, through seemingly no fault of their own, it would seem, are born with not the ability to be able to have a great intelligence and to be able to discern virtue and non-virtue. And as a result, they're very confused. They lead lives that are very that need a lot of discipline and so on to help them to be able to remain a viable person within their community and so on, and not to hurt themselves or to hurt other beings and so on. So I can look at everybody tonight and feel reassured that everybody here is a very intelligent person and is not suffering from the unintelligence of being classified as someone who does not know the difference between virtue and non-virtue. They're not stupid. So these 8 leisures, being free from these unfavorable conditions, give us the time and the energy and resources, if we take advantage of the resources, to be able to keep ourselves as a precious human life, as a precious human being, to recognize what it is that we are ultimately here to do. What is the purpose of to be a human being? So at this point right now, I'd like to just close this for a moment and ask if anybody has any comments or questions, and maybe call on y'all to comment, because discussion is an important part of these meetings that we have. To be able to express yourself, to be able to think about what it is that you say, and so on. And we reveal our habitual tendencies. What we're trying to do is to open our mind and keep the mind open. So these discussions help us to do it. So, does anybody have comments or questions? Okay, Kunga, you got your microphone off.
Looked like Alia was gonna say something.
Oh, go ahead. Did you want to go? I can wait.
Nope, I'll wait.
Okay, okay. um, I was just gonna say I really appreciate the way that those eight virtues are kind of broken down with like more of a definition of like what it is and what is categorized as each one of them too. Um, is that what all of, I didn't get through all of chapter two, but is that kind of basically what it's going through? Because I feel like it's kind of piggybacking off of chapter one, with like the different families as well. So I think it's really helpful to have like the definitions and the way that's broken down very like simply, like with like one sentence. And um, it's interesting to see, I think, in my own life or maybe where I've been at some point too, um, the different like virtues and who's categorized as those, especially when you're just meeting people in the world and in life and trying to meet people where they are too, to kind of see like, you know, not just where maybe you feel like you are, but also where they're at, and just appreciating that and understanding that and kind of giving a different perspective of um, you know, where people are in their lives. Like for example, I had a patient at the hospital this past weekend who was actually homeless, and he was like maybe 55, but he looked like he was 80. You know, it was very unfortunate, but you know, he was kind of childlike, kind of like what you were saying like the week prior about, you know, people are like reborn, maybe like a child, but like in an adult, you know, they're in an adult body. But um, he was very humble despite his circumstance, and he was basically sleeping in a laundromat in PG County Mall. Um, and he had a lot of medical conditions. So luckily we were able to get him like a medical shelter. But I think he's somebody that really like touched my heart, because I was like, oh, wow, this is his condition. This is his birth. This is where he's at. And I think it really helps me as a nurse when I'm meeting patients in the hospital where they're at, you know, not like, oh, you should be this or you should be that. It's more like the curiosity versus the judgment. Um, and so, I mean, like he was aware, but you know, it was just unfortunate his circumstance kind of thing. So I can kind of put him into like those categories, even like, you know, my parents and where they're at also. It's really interesting. And Zara has told me before, you know, it's like, and I'm starting to learn and understand this, that we pick our parents as well, I guess, as beings. So that's something I'm kind of understanding and learning and being a little more curious about myself. So not only like the understanding of myself, but just the understanding of like other people and where they're at, and then just the birth maybe I was given to. So it's nice to have it so eloquently put in like the list of the eight virtues so of this human life.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yes, you recognize it very well and articulate that very well. And that's you know what I think the Buddhism is very good about. The Dharma teachings is being able to articulate these very subtle things that
Mm-hmm.
you know we take for granted. But meanwhile, they are the things that are causing us to do the things that we do or don't do. So a
Mm-hmm.
great deal of awareness of who we are comes from understanding these subtleties.
Right.
Thank you. So Kunga, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. So what I was thinking about was that the this idea of rebirth
Uh,
and
oh, I'm sorry, I muted you by mistake.
okay, the idea of rebirth,
Yes.
and that every morning when we wake up, It's kind of like a rebirth. And so that, we can, when we wake up in the morning, you were telling me about your back issue earlier, Pema Dorje, and I thought, if you wake up in severe back pain, that can be like waking up in a hell realm, and until that pain is relieved, I mean, you really can't do anything else. It's very difficult to practice the Dharma. It's very difficult to do many of the things that you would enjoy during your day because that pain is overwhelming. So that's sort of like, a similar experience we might have is to being like what it's like to be in a hell realm. We might wake up in the morning and be, really agitated, thinking about something that happened recently or something that's going to happen. Maybe we have a meeting with our boss that day, like in a performance evaluation, and we don't think that's going to go very well. Maybe we don't have a good relationship with our boss. So we might wake up very agitated, and that thought about that meeting might consume us so that we can't practice the Dharma, that we can't practice during the day. That might be like being born in the hungry ghost realm. We might, any of us could wake up and have a seizure, have a stroke, have some type of medical event happen to us overnight where we're completely unable to respond until we get some type of medical attention. Basically be knocked dumb by our physical state. That might be rebirth in the animal realm. Rebirth among barbarians, I kind of feel like that's where we are. If you wake up in the morning, you turn on the news, doesn't matter if it's CNN or Fox. I mean, basically what you're confronted with is like a world that, maybe it's just the slant of the news, but it seems like a world that's overwhelmed with negative behavior. There's not a lot of Dharma being projected on the news when you turn the news on in the morning. That makes me feel like, in a lot of ways that we live in the world of barbarians already. The next one there, rebirth is a long life God. What if you woke up and you found out you won the lottery? All of a sudden you had all the money in the world. Would it be difficult for you to practice the Dharma? If you knew you could just vacation wherever you wanted, go wherever you want, do whatever you want all day, would you be able to find any time to practice at all? If that happened to you, that would be like a being reborn into the God realm. Rebirth among people who hold wrong views. I mean, that's sort of like similar to the barbarian world for me. I mean, I kind of feel like that's everything I learned in Buddhism is sort of going against our consumerist culture, capitalist culture, where everything is about making money, being a success, not thinking about doing things for others, but doing everything focused on doing things for yourselves. Rebirth in the land. Also, I was thinking about these last three. Is kind of like when you're in a dream. When you wake up, if you're having a dream at night, it's just like real life, and there's no. You all of a sudden, like I had a dream a couple of nights ago where I stabbed this woman, and I could feel the knife go in and hit her rib, and that was like the dream in the dream I was like, oh, I had to do that, but all of a sudden there was no like thoughts about what was right and what was wrong. I was just like doing it. It's sometimes like I had a dream a couple weeks ago where I killed some animal, but then afterwards I said like a little metta prayer for them. So like the Buddha was actually in my dream, but usually Buddhism is not in my dream. There's no Buddha in my dream. I'm just like acting without any thoughts about the precepts or anything like that. And then also that last one, rebirth of the stupid person. I think, in my dreams, I am pretty stupid. I mean, I just accept what's going on. I don't question, things, incredibly crazy things are happening, but I'm just kind of going along with the flow. So I feel like a lot of those last three births, every time at night when I have a dream, I'm sort of in those realms, those realms there. So anyways, that's why I just want to say it kind of just struck me, Another way that you could think about this is not only are we reborn in the morning, after being dead asleep, but each moment we're having like these little rebirths. And in Buddhism, they say there's 64 moments in a finger snap. So every one of these moments is a rebirth. So, you know, it's not a very long rebirth, right? It's not a long birth, but you could think about during times during your day when, you know, you're overwhelmed with some kind of physical pain, just for a moment, you know, when everything is outside, is gone from your thoughts, you know, or you're overwhelmed by some basic need, like someone does something, you get really angry all of a sudden, you know, like all you can think of is how mad you are, you know, even though it doesn't last very long, it's the only thought you have. So each moment could be like experiencing one of these rebirths. You know, it doesn't last very long. It's very transitory, but it happens. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. I want to make a comment, but I want to get Bill and Zara to make comments. Bill, would you mind? How did this land on you? What did you think about this conversation on the eight leisures, precious human life?
Yeah, I had never, I wasn't familiar with that. I hadn't come across that before in what I've read about Buddhism. Um, so it was interesting, but I could relate in many of the ways that Kunga just mentioned, especially our world of barbarism that we're currently in. Maybe the world's always been barbaric. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's getting me thinking. Again, I really just, this is pretty new. I didn't do any prep. I didn't even have time to really think much about it. But you know, it's certainly helping me to think about these things now. Um, yeah, it makes me think of the Eightfold Path. Is that correct?
Yes.
Maybe we'll talk about that at some later time. But
Yes.
you know, the flip side of the negative of the leisures or the virtues. Um, but that's about it, really, for now. I'm still thinking and learning about where I want to go with learning about Buddhism and putting my energy into that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Zara, how about would you make a comment, please?
Hey, Lance, you're so sweet. Thank you. Do you want me to just make a general comment on the eight leisures or?
Well, just how it landed on you. You know, you've had, you know, years to be able to reflect on this, and how has that been helpful to you, or has it been a hindrance to you?
Um, for me, now that this is like I'm on year six with you and this is my fifth iteration, it lands on me differently than it did maybe for Aaliyah and Bill at this moment, where I can very much relate to what Bill just said from even like 6 years ago, like in hindsight. And so now, and even Aaliyah, where like you said, she beautifully articulated a personal anecdote about like it was just so touching what she described. And then Kunga, you're always so good at summarizing concisely like some of these highlight points and whatever content we're covering. For me right now, Lance, um, here's what I think if someone's listening to this is it's easy to get caught up in the concepts, the language like hell, ghost, and get really turned off quickly. Like, what does this mean? Like, and like kind of your brain shuts you down, the ego. You're like, how does this, conflict with my Abrahamic values or Christian values or Islam? Like immediately the ego part of the brain was like, I can't get into this Buddhism thing. Like that's 6 years ago me. But now coming in, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in the hell realm from 8 to 10 a.m. Then I'm hungry gross from 12 to 2. Now I see these all as psychological states that are momentary coming in and out. So now I'm able, like on year six, to be like, oh, like a Care Bear t-shirt, where you've got Grumpy Bear, Rainbow Bear, Care Bear. I'm like, oh, I'm hungry Ghost Bear today. You know, where like and so then I'm able to be so compassionate to myself, like self-love, and then just burst that out and be like, oh, there's someone who's in um, the hell realm right now, and like just be like, I got compassion for you, my friends. I'm able to now generalize what initially was a turnoff because I'm like, what is this? Like, who's living in like these 18 hell realms? I'm like, where is this place? Now I see them as psychological state plants, like as very fluid, day to day, hour to hour. I'm like, am I about to start my menstrual cycle? So I'm, you know, hell realm. I'm like, I just got a bonus. I think I'm gonna go get my manicure. I'm in God realm. So it's just like now it's just fluid psychological states, like dynamic, like he said, it could be 60 seconds in a moment, thought to thought, and everything is literally a rebirth. Every single thought is a rebirth into the next. So, but from the practicality of it, 6 years from now, I'm no longer like the terms don't throw me off the way they did. Now it's experiential. And you've asked this before of us, you're like, are these real places? Or, you know, like you've asked us to think out loud as a group. So now just from a practical and the body I have now in this vessel called Zera, Zera sees those terms as psychological states, creating my own suffering or happiness, if that makes sense. I only know I have this body regardless of reincarnation. And those realms really help me to be like, oh, this is more of an emotional frame of where I am right now, maybe for a couple hours, a couple weeks, like he was saying about your lower back pain. So I think it just makes it easier to be like, be nice to Zara, be nice to Aaliyah, be nice to Bill, be nice to Lance, be nice to Kunga, and hey, be nice to other people in the meantime, because they're also carrying the God, even like popular people. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be that. Like I literally, now that I understand it, because then I can't do Dharma. If I'm so caught up in my own stuff and the sparkle and glamour, you can't smile and say thank you and really tap into gratitude if your ego is constantly distracted by people falling over you. So that's quickly to summarize in my Zara way, how I perceive it now versus 6 years ago, and how I can understand Bill and Aaliyah's beautiful insight with the content and relate to Kunga now. So thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the conversation, Lance.
Thank you, Zara, and thank you all for your comments. And I'd like to point out that what you all said in your own way, which is why we have these discussions, is that we repeat things 3 times. You know, our prayers are repeated 3 times. These practices, these contemplations, these meditations, you know, we go through these cycles of them. The first time we go through them, we're reciting the coarse words, the gross words. We're getting a gross meaning, but we're not really digging in. The second time we go through it, we're digging in a little bit more. Maybe we've read some things. We've heard the instruction from a teacher. So we're using the practicality of what it is, you know, whether is it a physical thing that we're talking about? Is it an intellectual thing that we're talking about? Is it a psychological thing that we're talking about? So we're looking at it from a practical point of view the second time. The third time is the time that we're relating it to our own experience, to how it lands on us, what it means to us, how it is that we relate to it, how it is that these things come in, and how we turn them around and bring them in and use them for our conversation with others and so on, and helping others and so on. So you all specified, you talked about those three levels, and that's something that we emphasize. This is part of the meditative process. When we begin meditation, we begin by learning how to settle down, how to quiet our mind, how to focus our mind one pointedly on, you know, virtue. How do we do that? then how to keep the mind centered there. And then as things arise, as thoughts begin to come up, how we deal with those thoughts and so on. And sometimes those thoughts need to be, say, oh, I don't need to think about that right now. I'm trying to develop my meditation. I need to develop the Dharma understanding. So, whether or not I have to, pick up my car tomorrow, or whether or not, I'm not feeling well, or whether or not I got to do something at work or something like that. Say, I can put that off. I don't have to think about that right now. I need to think about the Dharma. So we're being selective and choosing to narrow our point of view in the way that we're looking at things. So that's the personal way in which we're dealing with this. Another thing is that we deal with things on an emotional level. And that emotional level, we call these the afflictive emotions, because these emotions are like covering up our true nature. The emotions start here in the brain, here in the brain thoughts. And they are like contamination that covers up our heart thoughts. And the heart thoughts are like an indestructible diamond, like this diamond, like this, that has many different facets to it. And the diamond itself is made up of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And these are the four vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta, of the enlightened mind, the holy enlightened mind. But it's covered up. We've got this diamond within ourselves, but it's covered up by our emotions that we've allowed the brain to take over control of our heart center, of our true nature. So what we're trying to do is to remove those emotions, clean it away. So going through this process is part of that, is what we're doing, and so on. The other thing that blocks our pure nature is our mental misconceptions that we hold on to. And we think that we've got this wisdom. We think, oh, I made it through 50 years or 40 years or 30 years or 80 years of my lifetime. And boy, have I learned a lot, and I don't need to learn anything more. I know it all, And that's a huge misconception. But that's a typical human misconception to hold on to, that we have this innate wisdom, or we've developed this wisdom through our own practical experiences and so on. But we have to realize that there's something that we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. But we hold on to that which we know as being the absolute, as being permanent, and so on. So that continues to block up our true nature. And the third one is our habitual tendencies, that although we may have been able to cut through the afflictive emotions, we may have been able to clear away the mental misconceptions, the delusions, and so on, and be seeing healthily and so on. But there's still habitual tendencies that we don't count on, that we don't expect, can pop up at times. And the way that we recognize those is through these kinds of conversations and interactions, because this is when those things come up. And if we hold back and we sit in the back of the corner of the room, like maybe we did when we were in the 8th grade or something like that in school, and we don't want to give our ignorance away to the teacher and to the other class members, I step away. I try and hide. But if we engage ourselves and let ourselves think out loud and so on, to develop our stream of consciousness and have faith in that, that a lot will be revealed to us that, oh, I still have this work to do. Or it may reveal to you, oh, I do have some wisdom. I have learned some lessons. Some things have come up. I have removed those emotions. I have removed that delusion. And now some wisdom is coming up that I never really thought about, but there it is. It was there the whole time. And now I can see it. Now I can work on it. And this is what we try to do in this set of discussions that we have, is to encourage this conversation, because this is what really helps you to cut through. So I know we said that we try and stop at 8:30 on these things, but if there's something that is really interesting to keep talking, I would like to continue this now and continue with the next group of we talked about the 8 leisures, but now we need to talk about the 10 endowments or the 10 enrichments. So if you all don't mind, if we can continue this conversation for maybe an extra 15 minutes or so would be very good, because I think it's good to be able to, keep this as a package, if you will. Is that okay? Anybody have any problem with that? Okay, good. All right, so then I'm going to screen share this again. Let me see here. Sorry, I need to see how I... Okay, I'll do it that way. Okay, so now I'm going to screen share this. So the next thing was... So we talked about, we talked about the working basis, our precious human life. So it says this kind of leisure and endowment is so difficult to obtain. When one obtains a physical body which is easily lost, do not waste it, but use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. We have this gift of life that we gave ourselves. So the way that works, we'll talk about another time. But right now, we just need to look at the leisures, which we just did. And next are the endowments. What are these endowments? What are these enrichments? What is this gift of life that we gave to ourselves? So the 10 endowments of being a human being. So there's 5 external and there's 5 internal. So the 5 external, I'm going to go through these quickly, is born where the Buddhas have arrived in this world. The Buddha has taught the precious Dharma. The Dharma continues to be taught. There is a Sangha to maintain the teachings, and there is love and kind support to continue the Dharma practice. So what does this mean? So born where the Buddha has arrived in the world. So we know of a Buddha who came and articulated all this 2,600 years ago, but there were many Buddhas that came before him. A Buddha, a living Buddha, a human Buddha, is one who has liberated themselves from the suffering of their confusion and so on, their delusion, their emotions, the things that I was just talking about. So there's been many Buddhas. But this particular Buddha who lived 2,600 years ago had this great power of wisdom that was articulated, that is carried through. And there's been many Buddhas who have come since then, who have either, redirected that those teachings or amplified those teachings. And so we are the beneficiary of all of that, all of these great masters who have come. So the Buddha has taught the precious Dharma. So the Dharma is a pathway. Dharma is a Sanskrit word that means pathway. So we say a Dharma with a capital D is the Buddha Dharma. That's the Buddha's pathway. A Dharma with a lowercase d, we say, is the pathway to do our job, whatever that is. To be the pathway to be a parent, whatever that is. To be a pathway to be a politician, whatever that is. Whatever, to be a carpenter, whatever kind of work that we do. There's many, many different mundane, everyday kind of pathways. But the capital D Dharma is the Buddha Dharma, the way to enlightenment or the way to liberation. So the Buddha has taught that, and there are Buddhas that have come to continue to teach that. The Dharma continues to be taught. So it's carried on by this society of the Sangha. We talked about the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the community of people who are using the Dharma as a platform to live their lives. So the fourth one is there's a Sangha to maintain the teachings, just what I said. And there is the love and kind support to continue the Dharma practice. So whether it is Dharma practitioners or different kinds of benefactors who donate, physical things. Maybe it's money, maybe it's a facility, maybe it's books. Different ways to enable those who are doing the teaching to continue to teach. Maybe they're doing the teaching, maybe they're giving the facilities to help maintain the teachings or so on. But this is external. This is outside of us personally. But this is what's going on, and we're the beneficiaries of this external endowments, these enrichments for human beings to be able to realize what it is to be a human being, to be a complete human being, by recognizing what it is to be an incomplete human being. So the 5 internal endowments are that first, we're born as a human being. That we weren't born as an animal, we weren't born as an insect. There's invisible beings that live in the ground that we don't see. There's beings that are in the atmosphere that are invisible that we don't see. But through technology we know that they're there, but we don't see them in our everyday experience and so on. But yet we're born as a human being who can, through our intellect and through our abilities, able to recognize these things and use the instruments to be able to help us to do that. That we're born in an area that has the holy teachings. We are born in a free land where all these things are available to us. Years ago, we went to libraries, and in these libraries were all these books and everything. Now we can just turn on our computer and Google a search or go to our AI or whatever, and all this information just comes forth to us, and so we have so much information, and including all these holy teachings. In the beginning, when I first got a computer years ago, and I said, oh my goodness, this stuff is so anti-Buddhism. But then I've slowly learned that the Buddha is in the computer as well. And it's miraculous, and the artificial intelligence I found is a great librarian, is what I call it, a librarian, to help sort through all these scriptural things, all these commentaries, all these practices, all these discussions, all these YouTube things, to be able to see all this. So we have this ability. There are some places in this world where they don't have that. So whether it's in India, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in China, whether it's in the United States, wherever, there's places on this planet where these kinds of teachings, these kinds of scriptures are not available to them. But we have the benefit that they are. So this is internal, that we benefit from the holy teachings, that we're born with the full faculties of the senses. We can see reasonably well, we can hear reasonably well, we can taste and smell, and we can touch. These are the 5 basic senses. So even if we're born blind today, or we're born with the inability to be able to hear or something, technology has evolved to the point that we can compensate for those lost senses and be able to kind of work around them and still lead a complete life as a human being, and even become enlightened and become a Dharma practitioner as a human being and so on. So we're born with the full faculties of the senses. Number 9 is having committed, not having committed the 5 heinous crimes or the 5 evil deeds. So to understand this, these 5 heinous crimes are killing a father, killing your mother, killing an arhat. An arhat is a practitioner who is on the path to becoming a Buddhist or to becoming an enlightened person. It doesn't matter whether they're a Buddhist. You know, everything with what we're talking about goes through a lens of Buddhism, goes through a lens of Dharma. But you can also use this lens to be the lens of Christianity or the lens of Judaism or Hinduism or Islam or whatever, you know, because they all, in their essence, in their core, are the same. So not having killed an arhat, a holy person, not having caused injury to the Buddha, to the awakened one. So this includes not only, you know, the Buddha who lived 2,600 years ago, of course, is long gone, but there's many, many other beings who are Buddha, you know, and we look at all beings as having Buddha nature within them, having the potential within themselves. But there's also the facilities, there's also the buildings, there's also the books, there's also the practices and all the tools that we use and everything to be able to intellectualize what it is to be a Buddhist practitioner and so on. So we look at that as not having desecrated or caused harm to any of those things, because they all are part of what it is to be a Buddhist practitioner and so on. And finally, to not have created a schism in the Sangha, in the community, to not have come between, you know, people and say, oh, I'm a better teacher than this other teacher, and you should come and be with me, or something like that, or that teacher is not so good, but there's this other teacher who's great, and so on, and actively you're trying to create a schism. Or maybe it's this Buddhism is not for everybody, and it's not for us, we should go to this other tradition, and so on like that, to create a split in the community. So those are called the 5 heinous crimes. And the commitment of those 5 heinous crimes could result in our going to what we call the hell realms, to be a hell realm being, that we're tortured by the demonic, you know, behavior of killing a father or mother, an arhat, causing injury to the Buddha, causing a schism in the Sangha, where we become completely absorbed with those deeds and the results of those deeds and so on. So we're free from that. So we have the endowment, the enrichment that we gave ourselves in this life. We were born in a situation where we didn't have that. Or if we did, I don't know everybody's background, but perhaps if you were born in those situations, maybe you've had the opportunity to purify that and to redeem yourself, so to speak, and to be able to transcend whatever result of that. Now you are living a virtuous, leading a wholesome life. And the last is the internal of having a devotion to the Dharma teachings, to the teachings of the Buddha, to the teachings of virtue, to the teachings of holiness and so on like that. So if it's the Buddha Dharma, that's wonderful. If it's Christianity, if it's Islam, Muslim, whatever, you know, those are wonderful things to be able to do. And the more that we engage in these things, we begin to see the intersection of all these things, that it's not completely exclusive of one or the other or something like that, in their essence form. No doubt, all of these things at one time or another, in one place or another, have been corrupted. And there is that corruption. And we need to be aware that we can recognize that, and that we can make the choice to either try and purify that at least within ourselves, or maybe we can take an active role of re-establishing the purity of whatever organization that is, and help to restore, the purity that was the main intention. In Buddhism, one of the things that we do, one of the things that the Lama teachers, the gurus and so on do, if you go to the temples and you take place, you take part in their teachings and practices and so on, one of the things they do is they have books right in front of them, scriptures that they are following. And they will go through page by page, line by line, word by word, and they will read from whatever scripture that is. And then they will tell you that they are giving their experience with it. They're giving their commentary on it. But they try and maintain a purity to the scriptures, because that has been the one thing that has been a constant that they've tried to hand down. So whether it's in Christianity, because I know they can do the same thing, I know in Judaism they do the same thing, I know in Hinduism they do the same thing, and I know in Islam they do the same thing, and all the other traditions that I'm familiar with do the same thing in their essence. They try and do that. So the Buddhism is one of those things. Which brings me to the point that Buddhism is not a religion. Some people practice it as a religion. They consider Buddha to be like a god, but that's not the way it's intended. That's not the way the Buddha taught it. That's not the way we practice it. This is a philosophy of the self, what it is to be a human being, what it is to be a purified human being, who then becomes the realization of their true nature, the awakeness of that Buddha nature, of being a free and open human being. So these are the 10 endowments, the 10 enrichments of being a human being. So with this, we have the working basis to then move to the next step of being able to engage with a teacher, be it the books, be it different gurus, whatever, your friends, Sangha, people who are more experienced than you might be, but to engage with that, and you become a teacher to some people, and so on like that, but to engage in that. So now we see that we have the basic ingredients to do that. So I'm going to leave it here for now and ask if you can give a very short comment on these points. And Kogo, would you start, please?
Yes, thank you. I was thinking, trying to think about the external and internal. I really couldn't, I don't know, I'm not sure that's clear on me what that exactly means. I can see the external as being this general environment that we're living in. Like I have the Buddhist teachings are available. They're continuing to be taught. Here I am in this group. I have a temple that I'm a member of. And there's a lot of people involved in that temple supporting the practice. I can see that external. But it seems like there's a lot of overlap for me. When I think of being born in an area that has the holy teachings, that seems very similar to what I just said above.
Well, I think we don't have a lot of time, but I think all of this is food for contemplation and meditation. So what may not be clear to us right now only means that perhaps we need to study it more. We need to contemplate it more. We need to have a meditative experience with it. So that bit of advice, I think, is, if you take it in the spirit that I give it to you, we're looking at things that are external to us, and we're looking at things that are internal to us, and to look at that dichotomy and see how that works. So let me move on. Thank you. So let me move on. Alea, what comments do you have?
I think that was a kind of like Kunga said, like, I think it's a lot to digest. So, like, I think I may just have to take it in some bits. But I think as you were going through what each one was and the definitions and the internal and external, I kind of just generally like the way that it's broken up in terms of like internal and external, kind of just factors of like human life, of just our human experience to what we feel internally to ourselves. And to your point about getting to like our authentic self and kind of peeling back all the layers and all of the feelings and thoughts that kind of help with, like you showed the diamond in that analogy of trying to get to our authentic selves despite what the internal and external forces are doing. So I did want to sit with this a little bit more, but I really appreciate the breakdown. And I think as you were going through the list, I was just kind of checking off some of the things to myself of which ones, I've been, blessed with myself or not. So I think it's just a lot to take in. But I do want to look at that some more. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Bill, how about, would you mind making a comment?
No, not at all. And thank you again. The lesson for me is certainly contemplation. I haven't really studied or thought much about these things for a while, so it's good to revisit all this. So I'm sure we could talk another 6 or 7 hours about
Okay.
these things, if not all night. So, but yeah, lots of observations. I mean, again, 2,600 years of Buddhist history is quite a lot. And, one of the things that I came across a long time ago was, the structure of Buddhism and how it's structured into the Eightfold Path and, the 10 blanking endowments. I mean, they're learning mechanisms, right? I mean, they're ways for people to remember. I mean, people who didn't have the internet, maybe, which is most everyone in the last 2,600 years.
Right.
So, but it's valuable because it does help you structure things and remember them. But and I guess the other separate comment is maybe observation is the internal and external being, to me, sort of like the ego and the environment being two sides of the same coin. They can't exist without one another. And I don't know, maybe that's an analogy to that. But yeah, a lot to think about. I really appreciate it. I made some notes and about some of the other things, which maybe we'll have time for in the future. But thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. And we will follow up on some of these things next time.
Great.
So, Zara, would you?
Yeah, I'll be really concise. So, a quick summary. I've been, as Kunga and Lance have already said, all of you, I'm doing a 3-year hybrid retreat where I'm like doing some advanced study for Buddhism, and this particular section that he's like consolidating briefly as an intro, I'm spending days of retreat on. Like, so like you guys are, if you're feeling like Aliyah and Bill, you're like, what, like you're exactly right. Like the first 3 times Lance went over this with me, I was like, I don't get it, Lance. So if you're feeling like I'm overwhelmed, like, so I think I just want to validate, like, because it's so recent for me. This is my 5th time with this course with him. The first 3 times I was like, I still don't get it. Like, and now really what I'll summarize is that the whole purpose of what he's trying to say to us is, or that section, that content, is that we're blessed to even come across we have good merit, and that our lives are precious. That's really the whole purpose of you thinking about, is like, oh, I'm glad I'm not an ant or a squirrel or a homeless person in another impoverished country. That's the whole idea. It's just like, okay, cool. I have food. My basics are met. That's really the whole takeaway from that section for me, after like hours thinking about each line as part of this additional course. That's what it is. It's like, do you value that you're a human being who has the privilege to suffer a little bit just enough, but you can still practice Dharma. You're not overinflated with your ego and you're not underinflated looking for food in the forest. That's kind of the whole thing about your individual privilege versus your environment, your larger macrocosm. Like in the United States, you have water, you can drink your water, you can flush your toilet. That's the whole idea, is like you can practice the Dharma because we're in the middle, we're born in the middle. And that's my takeaway from that after 6 years and hours of contemplation, Bill and Aaliyah, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. All right. So I appreciate everybody, all your comments. It was all very great. And there's just a couple other points I'd like to make about precious human life that we can do next week. We can start off our meeting next week with that. But for now, we need to recite our dedication prayer. So whatever wisdom, whatever realization, whatever merit we have gained, now we want to dedicate for the enlightenment of all other beings. So there's this prayer that we recite. So I'm going to go to this prayer. Wait a minute. Probably. This takes just a couple minutes, so you can follow along with me. I'll recite this. This is the dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgon. And Lord Jigten Sumgon is the founder of the particular lineage that we are part of. And I'll explain what that is another time. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shavaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much. Anybody have any last comments you'd like to make? I can stay for a while if anybody has questions or comments you want to discuss.
Lance, I was going to ask if you or Kunga could stay on with me. I had a question about Mahamudra, but not related to this teaching.
Sure.
This tonight's teaching, if you both could hang on for a couple minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
I'll see
Thank
you
you.
next.
Good night.
Good night, you guys.
Bye.
See you all next week. Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.